and welcome back to Salmon's Pizzeria. A first edition of this episode, and probably a last by the look of things, because there's not a lot more to talk about. Now the international break is ending. We have a special edition show with Josh and Adam. We have a transfer roundup. We're going to call it winners and losers of the transfer window in the top flight. Josh, how are you? You're obviously fresh off a Scotland show.
I'm very good, Alex. Thank you. How are you?
Very good, thanks. And Adam, I know you've been avoiding the limelight since Hearts haven't been so good so far.
Yeah, that's fair comment. To be fair, I there's nothing really to add. It's great that the football's back, but simultaneously not so great that the football's back. So yeah, just one of those moods.
Yeah. Well, no, that's not so bad. I mean, what's even worse for you is it's maybe we're going to be talking about more of the past rather than the future. And I've asked each of the boys to pick 3 winners and 3 losers, which they have thoroughly researched and thought about, I'm sure, and picked their winners and losers of the transfer window. We are just going to get straight into it. And Josh, before I just ask for your winners and losers, I know one of your winners, and it is your club, Celtic. Pressure may be told from fans because they've spent big in the end.
Yeah, they did. It took a while for things to go over the line, didn't it? Deadline day, Celtic signed 3 players, signed 4 players in the last week of the transfer window. I think a lot of fans halfway through it were rightly frustrated at the way it was being carried out, bit of unprofessional air surrounding the window. But in the end, they pulled through. They spent the money that they have. But I would add that Celtic brought in £43 million this summer. If you include the 30 million for Matt O'Reilly, so it's 43, and they spent 30. So they had a positive net spend of £13 million, whilst I would argue improving the squad. So I think it was a successful window in the end, but I do have a lot of concerns about the general recruitment processes at the club. The recruitment team is not functional at all. There's no... Brendan Rodgers said it in one of his press conferences where it's like the scout team will identify a player. Brendan Rodgers will say yes or no, and then it goes to the board to do the deal. He's stated he wants an overhaul of that over the next couple of months. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But on the whole, it was a decent window.
Yeah, I suppose, strangely, without looking at your neighbours too much, Rangers were in a position where they had to sell to buy, and for Celtic, there was no pressure, but it seemed as if they waited to sell to buy. Obviously, Matt O'Reilly does very much improve the budget with that 30 million, but before then, it's almost as if players like Lagerbielke were talked about going out on loan or going out for sale. You're waiting until kind of that deal is almost over the line before you go and get a centre back in Austin Trusty.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was perhaps down to the wage bill as well. Lagerbielke goes out, Trusty comes in, Matt O'Reilly goes out, Arne Engels comes in, Oh Hyun-gyu goes out, you eventually bring in Ademida permanently. So yeah, there's a lot of outs, I would say, but I think the club done a really good job this summer of clearing out a lot of the deadwood that was in the squad. Obviously, Kwon leaving on loan to Hibs, Lagerbielke, like you say, Bosan Lawal getting £3 million for him is good business. Benjamin Siegrist away out to Romania. So a lot of good, shrewd business was done there. I don't know if I'm not echoing there.
A little bit, yeah, but it just at the end there, so you'd be all right. Somebody you didn't mention there, though, that I am just going to quickly pick up on, because you said getting rid of the deadwood. A name you never mentioned was Mikey Johnston. Were you impressed with that deal? I mean, obviously he did well down south when he went on loan to West Brom, but the shirt just seemed a little bit too heavy at Celtic Park.
Yeah, that was it, basically. Mikey Johnston, Brendan Rodgers said he's one of the best products he's seen come out of the Celtic Academy, but he just never found consistency. Injuries were an issue, and like you say, the weight of the shirt was a big thing for him. He goes down to the English Championship with West Brom and Preston on loan. A lot of that's down to there's less pressure when you're playing for a club like West Brom compared when you're playing for Celtic. So yeah, good business to get £3 million for him, a player of that ilk, and that went towards bringing in new quality for the squad that's going to be better than Mikey Johnston.
Yeah, and Adam, I'll bring this one to you. Seeing Celtic get £3 million for Mikey Johnston must have raised your eyebrows a couple of times, especially when your star man was being linked with moves away for a similar fee by certain journalists.
certain journalists being solely you, pretty much. But yeah, £3 million is a very impressive fee for Mikey Johnson. But obviously now Republic of Ireland International, they can command that type of fee, even if he is, a bit part player at Celtic. And I think it's a move that suits all parties. He seems happy down at West Brom. The fans seem to absolutely adore him. And he's obviously desperate for a new challenge if he's not going to quite cement that starting spot for Celtic. So, yeah, I think it's pretty beneficial for absolutely everybody involved. Celtic get good money. West Brom get a player who they know has performed well for the Baggies last year. Carlos Corberán gets to work with him again. There's no real losers in that deal for me.
And just before I go back to you, Josh, I want to ask you, Adam, about your namesake, Adam Idah. Do you think he was worth the eventual 9.5 million that Celtic might have to spend on
him? I think Celtic were perhaps caught in a trap whereby the better Adam Idah performed, the more money they would probably have to splurge on trying to get him on a permanent deal. There's absolutely no doubt for me that he pretty much aided Celtic's cause in winning the title last year. Popped up the winner in the Scottish Cup final, of course. But in terms of the fee that they've paid, I am very surprised because Celtic usually do pretty shrewd business, but I think they're pretty much masters of their own downfall with how well Adam Idah performed whilst in a Celtic shirt on loan. So I'm surprised at the fee. I'm surprised that they went that high. But again, I've praised Celtic's business, so I guess I have to praise Norwich for getting that money out of Celtic.
Yeah, and Josh, I'll take the same point to you. I mean, you watch Adam Idah week in, week out, and it was obviously something that Celtic were keen to get over the line. I think something that is maybe brushed over a little bit is that he is still very young and an international footballer who did come up here and scored some important goals. I mean, he turns it around in a very poor patch for Celtic at Fir Park, and then obviously goes and scores the winner in the Scottish Cup final. He also almost then goes and scores the winner at Ibrox. I mean, he scored some big goals for Celtic in his loan spell. So was there enough for you, first of all, to bring him back? And then were you surprised with the fee paid, or for you, was it just get it over the line?
Definitely surprised to see that Celtic paid £9.5 million. But I think the biggest mistake they made was not including an option to buy in the initial loan. If they put that in, then you'd be able to get Adam Idah for a much more decent fee than what they paid. The goals he scored last season were absolutely crucial. Without Adam Idah, Celtic don't win the double. So they were probably, like you say, Adam, caught in that trap where the better he performed, the more money they were going to have to pay. And the longer the summer went on, the more they were probably going to have to pay as well. Kyogo eventually get injured, and I think that's what kind of sprung Celtic into action with Adam Idah and made him go eventually sign him permanently. But yeah, I was surprised they paid £9.5 million. Well, £8.5 million plus one in add-ons. It could rise to, let's say, still quite young, 23 years old. Brendan Rodgers rates him very highly, wants to work with him, wants to improve him. But one thing I would say about Adam Idah so far this season, he has looked miles off it. His first touch is not there. He's looked quite poor so far this season, but I'm sure with a bit more training and match sharpness, that'll only improve. But yeah, surprised to see the £9.5 million. But like you say, with the goals he scored, that's one you had to get done. Could you have gotten better out there for £9.5 million? Probably. But he's proven in the league. He's proven at Celtic. He knows the club inside out already, and the manager wants him. So it was a priority one for me in the summer.
Okay, Adam, I will move on to you, and I'd like you to pick one of your winners out of the hat. Who have you got that's a kind of transfer window winner?
We'll go alphabetically. I've gone Aberdeen first and foremost as a winner. I think that's obviously reflected in their start, but it does seem like there's been a lot of deadwood shifted out. Obviously, the new manager has identified players that he wants to work with, and there's also a couple that performed well in Scotland that he's basically called upon. I think Dimitar Mitov is perhaps the signing of the summer for me, from a Scottish Premiership club to another. I think he's a top goalkeeper. 6 clean sheets already this season. Yes, there's the caveat that they played in the League Cup groups, but you can only beat what's in front of you. In front of him, Gavin Malloy's been pretty much a mainstay in that Aberdeen back four. Sivert Nilsson alongside Graham Shinnie to protect that defensive quartet. We're yet to see the best of the Finnish winger, Keskinen, even though he scored against Queen's Park, obviously in the last round of the League Cup. And I think Kevin Nisbet is a no-brainer. I know that obviously they had to replace Bojan Miovski, but Kevin Nisbet's circumstances down at Millwall to get the fee that they got for Miovski basically provide him the stepping stone to move on to La Liga with Girona. And then you're able to bring in a guy, albeit on loan, to start off with. That may well turn into a permanent transfer, but that, again, is proven in the league, has scored goals up here. And I'm sure he was absolutely delighted to get off the mark in Dingwall prior to the international break. So I think it's really shrewd business from Aberdeen. And I don't think any player that left the club in the summer, bar maybe Johnny Hayes for kind of nostalgia and fan admiration, I don't think there's any real great loss besides Miovski, as I've mentioned. Connor Barron as well is obviously a sore one, but I think Aberdeen fans were pretty much acceptant that he was always going to move on to pastures new. Would have obviously rather seen him gone down south, I'm sure, than to Rangers. But in terms of replacements, I think they've done pretty well, and that's obviously reflected in their start. So I've gone Aberdeen.
Yeah, and it seems to be, the manager's brought in some fresh faces. Kevin Nisbet, as you touched on there, gets his first goal against Ross County, the very late winner. But he's maybe not a like-for-like replacement in terms of what Miovski is, but will he be able to match his contributions, do you think, Adam?
I think they've got options now in the final third, don't they, Aberdeen? Big Gaze obviously managed to bag a couple recently as well. So he gives you something else. Esther Sockler, I'm not sure, is an out-and-out centre-forward. I think he sort of is one of the trio in behind a centre-forward. But between Gay, Kevin Nisbet, they've also signed Peter Ambrose, the Nigerian striker, in the summer as well. So it seems like they've got options. Would Kevin Nisbet be the guy that they hang their hat upon week in, week out? Possibly, given that he's already been up here and performed well. But I just think that they've got an array of options. So having not just one, but three centre-forwards that can hopefully score goals for them, it certainly lessens the workload for a Kevin Nisbet. But I think also personal circumstances are massive. The Millwall move clearly hasn't worked out. So I think it's a move that, again, suits all parties. He's desperate to come up here, perform, maybe turn that into a permanent move, look elsewhere, and get out of the den, really. So, yeah, I think Aberdeen have done really well to identify him and basically provide him with a platform.
Yeah, and Josh, I believe Aberdeen are one of your winners too. It has been a really fast and fantastic start from them. They'll be looking to continue that. But Kevin Nisbet is one of a great prolific striker for in the Scottish League for Hibs, and he'll be looking to add a few more. I think he's come out and said that he wants to be the top scorer in the league this season. Do you think that's a good coup for Aberdeen, because they obviously needed a replacement for Miovski, and this gave them something short term?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a guy who will come in, won't really need an adaptation period because he already knows the league, having played there with Hibs before, and he's a proven goal scorer in the league as well. So, yeah, like you say, if for 1 year, it's a good signing. Given how late Miovski left the club in the window as well in the last couple of weeks, it was essential that they had to get someone in the door, because it would have been a bit dodgy if they had to rely on the likes of Sockler, Gay and Ambrose throughout the season, who are unproven. So bringing in Nisbet, and he's no longer a young boy anymore. When he was at Hibs, he was still quite a wee bit raw, had some development to do, and he's went down to Millwall. It's not quite worked out, but he's come back. He's a mature boy now, and he knows he needs to kick on, and this is his opportunity to do that at Aberdeen. I think it's a perfect move for him, and obviously getting off to that fairy tale start against Ross County up in Dingwall a couple of weeks ago. Now he'll now only look to build for that with Aberdeen, who look like they could even challenge Rangers for second this season. Sorry, Alex, there, but they do look really good. They might fall off eventually, but Nisbet looks like a really good acquisition for them.
Absolutely, and I'll just stick with you there, Josh. Adam said Dimitar Mitov looks like one of the signings of the season. I mean, for the nominal fee that they paid St. Johnstone, do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. What was it, around about 350, around about that mark? It's a tremendous piece of business. He's outside Jack Butland and Kasper Schmeichel. He's probably the best goalkeeper in the league, Bulgarian international. So, yeah, very good bit of business from them. Obviously, Kelerus was good. Don't get me wrong. He was prone to a wee error here and there. He could chuck one in at times, but Mitov will come in and he'll be a solid goalkeeper for them long term as well. He's still got a right good few years left in him at that level, so I think it's a very good signing for Aberdeen. And listen, they've done so much pieces of business, or so many pieces of business this summer that are just great. Like, they've got it spot on. Jimmy Tilleen looks like an exciting manager. I do expect them to drop off at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe even go on and win a cup this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we do move on from Aberdeen, there is one man who probably wouldn't like to still be there, but is Duke, who has apologised to his teammates. He's back in training after going AWOL. I don't know how this will go, but Adam, do you see a future for him at Pittodrie, or is he just, biding his way until January?
I think you almost forget that Duke's there. He's certainly of use to Aberdeen. I just don't know if bridges have been burnt. I get that impression. Again, he's basically come out and said, hasn't he, that he's using Aberdeen as a stepping stone to move to England previously. This isn't the way to go about it. I don't know what's going on with him personally. But if Aberdeen can get him fully fit and firing, then he's certainly of use. I mean, again, the season before last, the fans absolutely adored the partnership that he and Miovski struck up. But I don't know if the manager just doesn't rate him or hasn't had a proper look at him. Haven't worked together yet all too often. I just get the impression that bridges have already been burnt, sadly. And it's probably for the best that he move on, be that in January or potentially next summer.
Yeah, and Josh, I think it's just 1 year left in this deal. So
yeah.
that will be something that Jimmy Tilleen will definitely be thinking about. I think it might be, it's definitely too early to start thinking about a new deal. And I'm not entirely sure he'll stay past that expiry myself. But do you think there's a chance for him to redeem himself to Aberdeen fans this season? Because he was a fan favourite.
Yeah, listen, stranger things have happened in football. He's already proven to the Aberdeen fans that he can perform for the club. It's a new manager now, so if he does get the chance, listen, and he does impress, then you never know. Football fans are fickle, aren't they? We're all like that. If a player starts performing for your club, it's really difficult to not back them. So if he comes in and scores a couple of goals at crucial times for Aberdeen, then you never know. But it doesn't look like he does have a long-term future there, does it? I could see him moving on in January.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, I'll just stick with you then. I'll come to you for the last of your winners.
For the last of my winners, I had Dundee United. To be honest, I had them down for automatic relegation. At the start of the season, I thought they were going to go straight back down. I didn't really highly rate Jim Goodwin as a manager, but they've started the season in terrific fashion. They've brought in some really good players. Ryan Strain, albeit I do believe he's injured at the minute. The two North Macedonian boys, Trapanovski and Babinski, look like good pieces of business. They've also brought in some young players from down south. So they've done well. They made a really good start to the season, and they got rid of Tony Watt after, he really wasn't in the plans, was he? And Adam, you touched on this with Aberdeen earlier. They've not really lost a lot of players bar Miovski, and I would argue the same with Dundee United, where they've not lost a lot of quality in their side, and they're kicking on this year. They struggled to get over the line a wee bit in the Championship last term, but they've done fantastically at the start of this season, that culminating in that 1-0 win at Tynecastle. Sorry, Adam, but they do look really good. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep this up under Goodwin, and if they can eventually go on and maybe challenge for a European place. I don't know, but they've done some nice business so far, and I think they're definitely a winner of this window. And I'll be interested to see if they can keep this up through the season. Jack Walton as well and goal looks quite good, so I think it's been a good window for United.
Yeah, Adam, if we think 2 years back to that Dundee United side that inevitably lost every single game before it started, how different is this now? Because Jim Goodwin was brought in to bring them back up. Fans weren't happy then. He's now got them back up. Fans are still saying he should have gone. he's still there. They're doing all right. I'm not entirely sure if they're still asking for him to be gone, but you've seen them play your team now this season, and before, I will openly admit, I said to you that Naismith should probably be sacked if Hearts didn't win the game, and came away with absolutely nothing. Were Dundee United a surprise factor for you so far?
Yeah, I guess they probably have been. I'll be honest. I thought when I watched the Dundee derby, I didn't think they were that great defensively, but they certainly could cause problems. Obviously, prior to the international break, they're up against the Hearts team that cannot score a goal for love nor money. So, yeah, I think in terms of the recruitment, I am surprised that they've let a Scottish contingent go in terms of different young players. But again, a lot of them seem to occupy areas which Jim Goodwin has replaced with these North Macedonians, and it's a market that he tapped into previously when unearthing Bojan Miovski for Aberdeen. But I just thought that the likes of Chris Mockray, maybe Declan Glass, a couple others would have a part to play. But he's obviously tapped into a market that's worked well for him previously. And so far, so good. Again, we're only 4 games in. It's early doors. But I can't believe the signing of Ryan Strain as well. That's another that I thought, with all due respect to Dundee United, I thought he'd be destined for a move down south or elsewhere. So, yeah, I think it's early days, but so far so good for Dundee United, absolutely.
Yeah, and Josh, a big test for them this weekend coming with Rangers going to Tannadice. But is this a chance for them to kind of show exactly what they're about? Because they're no strangers to taking points off of Rangers at home.
Yeah, definitely. It should be an interesting game. Obviously, Rangers not really starting the season too well, and Dundee United quite the opposite. So, yeah, definitely. Jim Goodwin's also got form for taking points off Rangers and beating Rangers in previous roles at St Mirren and Aberdeen. So, interesting to see if he can do it. Dundee United will always hold their own at Tannadice. It's going to be a really tough game for Rangers. I wouldn't be surprised to see Dundee United pick up a result in that game. They're on form at the minute. So, yeah, I think they'll make a game of it, definitely. But Rangers, they really need to get the points. And if Celtic win on Saturday against Hearts, big if, Rangers could go into that game 8 points behind Celtic. So the pressure will be right on them, and Dundee United will just feed off that. And if there are any nerves in that Rangers team, they'll look to take advantage. So interested to see what happens there. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised if Dundee United takes some points off them.
So a when, not if, isn't it, Adam? But we'll go back to you. What other winners have you got for me then in this transfer window?
It sounds crazy given that they lost their captain on deadline day, but I'm going across the city and I'm going to Dens Park with Dundee. I know that's perhaps a strange inclusion.
Yeah, I think it is, because I think you've got them potentially as was it you. I think you were talking about the kind of lack of signings, Josh. Was it? They've not exactly signed too many players. I mean, they bring in Simon Murray and another one who have started the season unbeaten, albeit 3 draws. What's made you put them in the winners then, Adam?
I just think Dundee are going to be a lot of fun this year. I think there's going to be goals at both ends. But I look at it and I just think that sometimes less is more. And I think this is kind of not a new era for Dundee per se, but there does seem to be a kind of feel that a lot of players have come to the end of their cycle. So Lee Ashcroft's left the club, Max Anderson's left the club, Sean Byrne, Zach Rudden, Diego Pineda, players that have kind of been teetering and kind of holding on to their Dundee careers. I think Tony Docherty recruits really well, certainly did so last season, and for many, myself included, Dundee were a surprise package within the Premiership last season. John McCracken on a permanent deal has obviously earned a Scotland call-up off the back of making that move permanent. He's replaced at centre-half, albeit Clark Robertson's injured. We're yet to see the best of him. The full-backs, obviously, they were unable to hold on to Owen Beck, who was a star performer for them last year. Ziad Larkesh is coming on loan from QPR. I've been pretty impressed with him so far. Sam Baybrook in midfield, we're yet to see. perhaps will get more game time now Luke McCowan's away. I'm amazed that they've managed to hold on to Lyle Cameron. I like Mo Salah in midfield. Seb Palmer-Holding's come in as well. Decent foil for Simon Murray. And obviously, Scott Tiffany's playing really well to start off this season as well. So the kind of continuity is key, but there's the end of an era for some players. And I just think it's shrewd business from Dundee so far. So, yeah, I've got them in. Perhaps not everybody's going to be in agreement with that, but just how I feel.
Do you think that, because you touched on a lot of the players there and players that they've managed to keep hold of, do you think that makes them winners rather than just what they've brought in, what they've managed to keep as well? I mean, obviously, they lose Luke McCowan at the 11th hour, and that will be a big loss for them, but they've managed to keep a hold of, Lyle Cameron and Josh Mulligan's coming through. They seem to have a strong contingent already there, and like you say, less is more. They've added to that rather than just going quantity and quality as certain other clubs have done.
Certain other clubs being
Hearts of Midlothian, yes.
Yeah, I think sometimes less is more. They've got a little kind of contingency there, like you say, and just the odd additional sprinkle of quality. I mean, Simon Murray is incredible business. Obviously, boyhood fan, has sampled Dundee previously. I just think that he's got good foil and they've got good options. I would not be surprised to see Dundee repeat a top 6 finish. And when was the last time that Dundee finished back-to-back seasons in the top 6 of the top tier? Because I certainly couldn't tell you. So, yeah, I've gone for Dundee as an obscure inclusion.
Yeah, well, I suppose rather than going back and forth then and mentioning them twice, Josh, I'll just bring it to you because as far as I'm aware, you have them on the losers list.
Dundee, I think I did actually, yeah. Just obviously losing McCowan at the last minute is such a key player for them last season. And to be fair to them, I think they've done really well in holding out for the fee they did for him, £1 million from Celtic. They had some poor bids from Hibs, obviously. So, yeah, losing a player of his quality is never going to be good. Obviously, Owen Beck, I know he didn't play towards the second half of last season, but losing him as well. But like Adam said, they have done some decent business in bringing in, obviously, McCracken on a permanent deal. Simon Murray is tremendous business as well. So, I don't know, it's just an interesting one for me because can they go on and repeat that feat of top 6? I think it was such a great achievement for them last season. I'm still not convinced. Obviously, they're still the leaking goals at the back, which is a bit concerning.
Is it a squad depth thing for you that makes you think that?
Perhaps, yeah. And when you lose such a key player as McCowan, that's going to be a big thing as well. But listen, Tony Docherty's an excellent manager. I highly rate him. I've seen a couple of people touting him for the Scotland job if Steve Clarke gets sacked. So I think they could do well, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the bottom 6 as much as I'd be surprised to see them in the top 6. I don't think they've had a bad window per se, but I think there's other clubs that have had much worse windows than them. St Johnstone, I think, but yeah, it's not been great for them. But I think they've shrewdly done all right, but not as much to give them a full on A, if you know what I mean.
Adam, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I've only done 2 of your winners, or if you were saying Celtic were a winner as well. But if you have another winner, do let me know. And if not, let's get on to the losers.
Adam, or are you talking to Adam? Me?
Adam, sorry, Adam.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think it would have been a bit of a cop out to go Celtic, if I'm honest. I was tempted to go for St Mirren as well as a potential winner.
Go on then, explain your thinking.
I think Ellery Balcombe between the sticks looks a really shrewd acquisition. I think obviously they lost Ryan Strange, Sean Rooney. We've seen what he's done in Scottish football before. Bringing him back up the road, I think, was pretty much a no-brainer. They've lost Keanu Bacchus, granted. They've signed Killian Phillips to replace him. Oisin Smith's managed to contribute in the little game time that he's had for the Buddies so far this season. And now Kevin Van Veen's obviously signed to give them yet another option up front. I think they've got a plethora of forwards to choose from. I think their wing backs are capable of providing width, and Sean Ray is obviously a massive part of that. So they've lost 1 or 2 I think Keanu Bacchus and Ryan Strain, the two Aussies, are obviously the big ones. But so far, it seems to be, again, like-for-like replacements. And Sean Rooney, if he could stay fully fit, obviously they didn't have Ryan Strain towards the latter end of the season with fitness issues. So I think that's potential to be pretty much equivalent to Ryan Strain, the signing of Sean Rooney. And yeah, I think Killian Phillips can complement a Mark O'Hara or a Caelan Boyd-Munson midfield. Got good options, St Mirren. And Stephen Robinson is another who, again, does good business, manages to always recruit pretty well. And like Dundee, I would expect them to be pushing for yet another top 6 finish.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna stick with you, Adam, because for whatever reason I seem to keep taking 2 of Josh's at a time with both Aberdeen and then Dundee there. So, can you give me the first of your losers, please?
I'm going for Ross County.
Ross County. Okay. Yeah. Josh, agree, disagree?
I would probably agree with the Ross County shout there. Obviously, losing 2 players like Jan Danda and Simon Murray is never going to be easy. Ronan Hale does look all right so far, but he wasn't even playing full-time football before he joined Ross County. So I don't know if they're going to have the quality in the door to replace guys like Danda and Murray. Another loser, I'd say, St Johnstone, among a couple other teams as well. But yeah, it's been all right for Ross County, but they've not started the season in terrific fashion either. So be interesting to see though, because they always just seem to stay up, like regardless. They'll get into the playoffs and they just do it. So I wouldn't put it against them to do it again.
Yeah, our Ross County man Peter will be hoping to avoid a playoff this season. I think he said to me he'd rather go straight down than have to go through those emotions again. But Adam, just kind of talk us through. I mean, Josh obviously mentions there a couple of big names out, but do you think they've just failed to replace them, or is it the case of how do you replace a Jan Danda or a Simon Murray?
I just worry from a creativity stance with Jan Danda obviously being their main man, their focal point within midfield. Noah Chilvers has come in and seems to be highly rated. The fans seem to be delighted with that signing. But I just think there's massive pressure to fill those boots of Jan Danda. And ultimately, I know that Ross County will argue that it's perhaps a budget thing, that they can't have multiple options. But if they had somebody to maybe take the weight off his shoulders and chip in with assists, goals, contributions in the final third alongside him, then I'd maybe feel better about their chances. Like Josh says, Ronan Hale's had a terrific start so far. But to provide for the likes of him, Jordan White, Eamon Brophy, I just worry about where that creativity and that guile comes from.
Fair enough, Josh. I'll give you a decent chance to speak then. I'll let you pick one of your losers. I mean, obviously, we've heard Dundee. I wonder if you want to go into St Johnstone because you mentioned them a couple of times, or is it somebody else?
I'll go with St Johnstone. I don't think it's been a great window for them. They look like they're destined to go down this season, I feel. Obviously, losing Daniel Phillips in the middle of the park, he captained them on a couple of occasions last term. Losing Liam Gordon, Dimitar Mitov as well. And it's not like they've got money for these guys. They're losing them, well, they lost Mitov for buttons and then Liam Gordon on a free transfer as well. Daniel Phillips on a free transfer. So it's been quite difficult there. And the players they've brought in, I'm not entirely convinced that they are of that quality. Josh Ray, I know they've brought in Lewis Nielsen from Hearts, who's quite, well, Adam can say whether he's highly rated or not. But the names that they've brought in are not sticking out to me as if that they're going to replace the quality that players like Phillips and Mitov have left. So I don't think it's been a great window for them. Under Craig Levein, though, you never know what they can produce. They've got 2 nice goal-scoring forwards up front in Kim Pioka and Sidibe. So you never know, they could go on and keep themselves up with those 2 fully fit and firing up top. But at the same time, I'm just not entirely convinced that they've replaced the quality that's gone out the door, and the fact they've lost that quality for so little money. Players like that, you look at what Dundee have done with Luke McCown, getting some money for him. So, and well, Aberdeen getting money from Miovski, you expect not St Johnstone to get those types of fees for guys like Daniel Phillips and Mitov, but you want a bit more than what they got at the same time. So, not a great window for them, but you never know. They might be able to stay up if Kim Pioka and Sidibe keep on firing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've they were a surprise package in the first game against Kilmarnock, Adam, but their signings have been kind of stalwarts of the Scottish game, and then some young players as well, the likes of Mackenzie Kirk and Lewis Nielsen from your club, Jason Holt, and I mean Uche Pizu as well, a Hearts icon for maybe one season or two. What do you think about their business, St. Johnstone? Because they do, as Josh said, seem destined for the championship. I think everyone, apart from Josh, had them finishing last on the pizzeria. So is it a case of preparing for next season?
Perhaps. I'm very surprised in their defensive departures. Andy Considine has obviously since retired. Ryan McGowan's left for Livingston. Liam Gordon, a bit of a sideways step, going from St Johnstone to Motherwell. And again, the recruitment, particularly at the back, for me is a wee bit scattergun all over the place. I don't see how St Johnstone survive, if I'm being honest. If they are going to somehow pull off the Great Escape, as Josh rightly says, it's going to be down to the two up top. A couple decent players, but I worry for St Johnstone at the back. I really do. I just think losing that know-how, that experience, and a top-class goalkeeper. Josh Ray's been decent since he's come in from Airdrie, don't get me wrong, but they were big gloves to fill with Dimitar Mitov, and I think it's going to be another long season for Saints.
I've just read the chat again. I would like to apologise to Josh for throwing him under and saying that he had Dundee on his losers. Adam, it was you that had Dundee potentially on the losers had they not signed Simon Murray. So you've done a switch up on me, and absolutely thrown me. So yes, apologies to Josh on that one. Which makes me want to go back to him because I now have only heard one of his losers, and I now have heard one of yours as well, Adam. Unless St Johnstone is one of yours, I'm not sure who you're picking now.
No, I'm going to St Johnstone as well. Yeah.
Nice. So we've heard of two of your losers. Josh, let's hear your second then. Apologies, mate.
I had Hibs down, I think it was, as the other one. That, like you said at the top of the show, the rebuild hasn't really gone to plan, has it? They've not got results this season under their belt, and that's a major concern. They've brought in quite a few young players. Kwon on loan from Celtic, Kieran Bowie coming in, Chiantis, he did look very good in his second debut against Kelly at Rugby Park, but I'm just not entirely convinced that Hibs have got the quality to get on and challenge for a top six finish. They're desperate for one. They're desperate for a European place, and like St Johnstone, like you were saying, Adam, it's a wee bit scattergun the recruitment. I know they're supposed to have a process in place at the top of the club. Malky Mackay is the sporting director, but I just don't see what that process is at Hibs at the minute, and I think it is set up for eventually when David Gray, if and when he does get sacked, it's Malky Mackay that comes down and takes the job. But yeah, I don't think it's been a great window for them. But you never know. The Kieran Bowie is a really good talent, but he's just got injured for Scotland under 21s. So it's very tough for them at the minute. But they do have some players in there. Triantis looks good from what I've seen. Kwon was all right in St Mirren last season until he got injured. So maybe those guys can kick on. You never know what can happen. And they have had a lot of changes at the back, losing a couple of centre backs. But yeah, I'm still not convinced by Hibs, among other clubs.
Yeah, and Adam, you'll be happy to hear that the rebuild isn't going so well across the city. A case of even the new manager, new players, even recently new owners who came in with new ideas and basically implemented none of them. Said, we're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to focus on this, this, and this. It's going to be quality over quantity, but we are also going to bulk up the squad. We promised that it's not going to be journeymen, but now they're being linked with Dwight Gale. It seems to be all nor here nor there for Hibs, and everything that they have said is what they aren't doing.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I just think that they're coming out and saying these things to appease the fans, but the supporters aren't daft. They'll eventually see through all this. I mean, again, we've thrown out Dwight Gale. They're just being linked with Emiliano Marcondes because he had a great spell at them last season. It's as though they're just trying to cling on to any positive that they can take into this season. I don't know if they are a loser per se. I think there's players that can be useful. Kieran Bowie probably at the top of that list. But their recruitment's all over the place and has been for a good few years, arguably since Leanne Dempster and Jack Ross left the club. Maybe they've basically moved away from a bit of an identity. So yeah, I don't know. I'm unsure on Hibs, to be honest with you. I feel like some players can be useful, but in terms of the massive rebuild that they promised the fans, they certainly haven't stuck to those promises. And I think the supporters will see through that soon, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Josh, that I think they are a loser of the window. And I think what's the biggest issue is now, especially after last season, are they looking at back-to-back years, not just without European football, but without a top six finish? Because Aberdeen, who were in the bottom six last season, have improved immensely, and we've already seen that, and are probably now potentially favourites for third, and looking to cement a challenge for second place. Hearts, not quite what they were last year, although a slow start then as well. Hibs, just nowhere to be seen. So is it a case of now they need to go, right, this is going to be a rebuild over a couple of seasons. We need to just kind of put whatever happens this season to a side as long as we start to build a kind of formula throughout the club?
Yeah, they really need an identity in there and a process of their actual model in the transfer market and what they're trying to do, whether it be bringing players in for a low price that have high potential and looking to sell them for major profit. I just don't see that. In Hibs, I can't remember the last time they sold a player for a decent fee that was a success at them. Maybe any of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I just think there's major issues at the club. The whole Black Knight thing doesn't look as if it's going well and to plan. I just worry for them. I think it's going to be back-to-back bottom six finishes again. And they really should be, a club like Hibs should be challenging among Hearts and Aberdeen for that third place spot, but they're miles off it at the minute. So I think it could be a long season for them, but you never know. Things can turn. I do feel sorry for David Gray a bit. He's a club legend there, and he's come in and he's not got great players at his disposal. He's his first ever job in management, first ever permanent job. And he's not done great. I think that's maybe what's given the club a bit of extra leeway, is that it is David Gray in charge, and that even though results aren't going their way, it's a club legend that the fans love. So maybe if the results don't come again after the international break, then it could get worse. Adam will be pleased to hear all this, but I just worry for Hibs.
Martin Boyle, maybe that last decent sale. And now he's back at the club.
Yeah,
exactly. What does that say?
Exactly.
I think you're spot on, Josh. I couldn't tell you the last decent fee that Hibs managed to get for a player. He's the only one that's come to mind, because again, there was talk of Eli Yuan obviously leaving the club, but we're yet to see him kick a ball this season. So yeah, I don't know. Hibs are pinning their hopes on one or two players, I think, to basically carry them through.
Adam, I'm not going to allow you to have Hibs for obvious reasons in your losers. I am hoping there's a certain club that you're going to mention, but who is your third and final losers?
I know they've had a good start so far, but I'm kind of tempted to say Motherwell. Again, okay. I'm not taking the easy option and agreeing with Josh's winners or losers here. I'm trying to spice things up. I did my research on Dundee. And Motherwell, I mean, there's just too many ins to mention, first and foremost. That obviously had to be the case, given that there was a load of players left the club. And ultimately, they lost key performers in most, if not all, areas of the team. Liam Kelly obviously departed for Rangers. Bevis Mugabe's away. Blair Spittle, big loss. Theo Bair, they got good money for, and they've brought in some strikers to replace, but they've not really got anybody that they can definitely for sure say will grab maybe double figures in league goals. In terms of new additions, I think Liam Gordon's a decent enough centre-half. I really like Maswanise. I thought he was excellent at Fir Park, gave Hearts a torrid time. But I don't know. There's something about Motherwell where it's maybe needing a wee bit of a refresh, and they didn't really get that. I think if you look at the starting 11, most are pretty much players that either were there last season or have basically re-signed for the club. It needs a kind of, not a revamp per se, because obviously you want some form of continuity, but one or two more additions, particularly in the final third for me.
Yeah, I think their biggest problem, Motherwell, is they've almost turned into a sort of hospital at the moment, and every game they seem to come out of with at least one
That's
injury.
true, to be
Every
fair.
training session seems to be at least one injury.
They have been mouthing off about, is it 8 players that they've had out, particularly pretty much since the Rangers game, since before the Rangers game at Hampden. They've said that there's a good few on the treatment table. Obviously, they'll be hoping that they have a part to play, but I don't know. I feel like one or two changes maybe were necessary, but is it a case of too many? They've started well, but the fixtures have been somewhat kind to them. I don't know where Motherwell are going to end up, to be honest with you. Wouldn't be surprised to see them finish anywhere in the table, bar the bottom two or the top two. They could be anywhere.
Josh, they were maybe unlucky to finish in the bottom 6 last season, but they've kept a hold of Lennon Miller, and for them that will be a big positive, because they'll be hoping in future years that's a guy who's going to make them a lot of money.
Yeah, they're pinning a lot of hopes for this season on Lennon Miller, given the quality they've lost and the players they've brought in. And like you say, Alex, they will be hoping to get a lot of money for him in future. Still just 18 years of age, and he looks an exceptional talent, scoring and assisting for the Scotland under-21s the other night, which was great to see. So, yeah, I'm sure they will get a good fee for him down the line. He's a homegrown player. If a Scottish club goes for him, he's been proven in the league now well over a year, and by the time next summer comes around, it'll be 2 years. And he's just standing out every time you see him, whether it be he plays Celtic or whether he's playing Ross County. He looks really good, and he looks like he can cope at the level. I think it's the right move for him, though, to stay at Motherwell and not get a move, whether it be down south or to Celtic or Rangers this early on in his career. Just get consistent game time, play week in, week out. That's what he's doing at Motherwell, and keep on improving. So I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Lennon Miller. But yeah, I think the club have done well to keep him, and that's probably the best bit of business of the summer, to be honest, is keeping Lennon Miller.
Fair enough. Before we do round up, then we've had our winners and losers there, if I can count properly. I promised Josh a laugh, Adam, which means both of us are going to have to talk about our teams. I don't know if you want to go first, and we can talk about Hearts and Hearts business, or would you prefer to leave it to last and make me talk about Rangers?
No, I'll take the hit, mate. You ask away.
Then. The floor is yours.
I mean, I don't really know what to say. I think it has the potential to be a winner, but so far the early signs just aren't there. Again, maybe this is a reason why I put Motherwell in my losers. The too many additions kind of reeks a wee bit of Hearts as well. It's tough. I just think that ultimately, I don't feel as though our start to the season is reflected by transfers. I feel as though it's a lack of understanding with regards to formation and using particular personnel in positions that they've been signed in.
Yeah, I've seen Blair Spittle playing the 6 this season, so there's clearly some issues.
Where Stephen Naismith said during the pre-season defeat to Fleetwood that he's basically been put in there because we need another 6. Malachi Boateng has since signed for Hearts, and yet Blair Spittle is still being continued to be used in front of a back 4, or even worse for me, in front of a back 3, and that just cannot exist. That is not his position. To me, I would have liked to have seen a wide player or two come in. I would have liked to have seen somebody else in the final third to provide competition, or a different option to Lauren Shankland. We've lost Kyosuke Tagawa back to Japan. Liam Boyce looks as good as done. As much as I love Liam Boyce, it just appears as though he's breaking down. So to me, could Hearts have maybe not opted to sign a Blair Spittle and opted to sign a winger instead? I might be feeling a little bit more. And I don't want to make this an anti-Blair Spittle thing. I feel sorry for him because, as you say, it's not his position. But it should be he or Danda in the hole. Why he's then used in front of the back 4, I don't know. It's as though we're just trying to get by without either Callum Neuenhoff or Benny Beningame. But to me, yeah, would I like to have seen, as I say, a wide player and a striker. and it seems beefed up the squad. There's a couple boys that are hanging on to their Hearts careers by their fingertips. And yeah, once European competition is done, I think January we might be looking to offload a few, to be honest.
Josh, that's a kind of debate that's gone on in the pizzeria chat. I've seen it amongst Hearts fans as well. But Danda and Spittle, both very similar, very creative players, and Stephen Naismith hasn't found a way to fit them both into the team.
Yeah, I think that's one of Hart's big issues is Stephen Naismith and just his inability to get out the best out of the players he's got. Like you say, Danda and Spittle, if you could get those two firing in the team together, they'd be exceptional because they've proven it with Motherwell and Ross County respectively. So, yeah, listen, I think they've got some decent players. Gerald Taylor, I watched him against Rangers in the 0-0 and he looked incredible that game. I don't know what his performances have been like since then. Maybe Adam can tell us more. Has he been poor?
Pretty poor, yeah. The following week at Dens, he had an absolute nuke against Dundee. So, yeah, again,
didn't he?
It's this bipolar behaviour that's like it was as though everybody was watching the Hearts Rangers, as you rightly say, Josh, and thinking, "Wow, he's a real coup for Hearts. How on earth have Hearts ended up signing him?" And then a couple of weeks down the line, you realise why he's ended up at Hearts and not somewhere with a higher ceiling. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's talk on the other side as well of the Colombian fullback Salazar. Again, seems a real coup, but James Penrice has performed really well, I think, since signing from Livingston. I've been quietly impressed with him. So I think there's a battle at left back to get in the team, and that was huge, to be fair, because losing Alex Cochrane was another big blow. Albeit a year left on his deal, good money, good move for him, given I believe he and his missus wanted to move back down south. So yeah, I'm not too concerned, despite the fact that we're leaking goals left, right, and centre at the back, but offensively, we just look clueless when it comes to entering the final third, sadly.
Yeah, and before we force me to talk bad, let's give it a good segue, because someone who was linked to my club from yours was Lawrence Shankland. He obviously doesn't.
That was just by you, though, wasn't it?
No, I'm actually
really
I've got
no real substance.
I'm gonna openly admit that I am no Keith Jackson, and I was actually quite against it this summer. The previous summer I was quite for it. This summer, I did think that it was time to look elsewhere. But Lawrence Shankland, a shadow of his previous season. You worried, Adam?
It took a while to get off the mark last season. So I'm hoping that he can find his shooting boots soon. To me, his body language is perhaps the biggest concern. His sheer anger. He's perhaps disgust at recent performances. To me, I think we had to enjoy Lawrence Shankland while we can. I honestly get the fear that there's a pre-contract just waiting to be signed in January, and that'll be him on his way. I'll be absolutely heartbroken if that is the case, but such is life, sadly.
Yeah, and rather than asking myself the questions, then I'll give Josh the great pleasure of setting me up on some Rangers things here.
Yeah, the thing with Rangers this summer, it's been the club just don't have money to spend. That's my take on it. They've had to sell players before they buy, and the money they've got for guys like Todd Cantwell and Scott Wright is nowhere near. Well, maybe for Scott Wright, but it's nowhere near what they should have got for them. But they've brought in Connor Barron, who looks good so far. Mohamed Diamandi in a permanent deal. We knew that was happening. Cherny looks all right from what I've seen. Casanwiro proper. Badrami, yet to see him yet, but. Alex, what do you think then? Is it one you're happy with, or are you a bit still a bit trepidation?
I think I'm quite disappointed and disheartened, and it's got nothing to do with the ins and outs that we did get. It's to do with the ins and outs that we didn't get. I mean, quite early on, we were warned that it was going to be outs before ins. And we were aware of this. And I think we were also kind of aware that this isn't a one-season wonder, a one-window wonder where every one of our problems is going to be fixed. We knew that and kind of had probably accepted before the season started. If you go back and look at the kind of previews and the pizzeria predictions, all three of the Rangers fans have said Celtic are going to win the league, and it's not often that you go in with that kind of blind pessimistic view. You always would say, you're always going to back your own team as much as you can, but I think because we know this is a rebuild and that we have to kind of trust the rebuild, it was always going to take a couple of seasons in terms of actually getting to that kind of prime position that Clement wants. But very early on, we were linked with 4 or 5 very promising players, and one ends up going to Norwich. One ends up going to another team in Germany. I think a couple end up with other clubs as well, and it just seemed to kind of fall apart very quickly. And then, as you say, we lose Todd Cantwell, who was very creative last year, but there was a clear kind of disconnection between him and the boss. I mean, that was set off very early when he was sub 15 minutes in against Aris and almost made to look like the scapegoat. I think it was a case of anybody could have been made at that moment, but with Todd Cantwell's personality, he was never going to work with Philippe Clement. We also lost a hell of a lot to the free agent market. And that was a big loss for us. And in terms of, I don't think Kemar Roofe, John Lundstrom, John McLaughlin, and the likes of these players actually improve our squad. Borna Barisic as well. Improve what is there for in terms of quality first team. I'm sit on the fence with Ryan Jack, but I'm not sure these guys improve the quality of the first team. But what we have lost is we have lost that kind of squad depth in terms of quality, and now you then think there's maybe an opportunity for some young players to come through. We've not seen that. You think there's an opportunity to then kind of dip into even the free agent market, which we might still see, but with a lot of the wage bill gone, that might turn into transfer budget, and it never really did. Did we spend a lot of that on Hamza Gamane and then think we're going to get more money, and that never came? I mean, James Tavernier still at the club, which was something that I think a lot of Rangers fans didn't want. A lot of Celtic fans probably did. Connor Goldson is gone, which for me was a big one, which had to happen just because of the staleness. But unfortunately, we're yet to see if Proper's going to be a proper replacement. So I would have, if I was not in the host chair tonight, I would have put Rangers as one of my 3 losers. And I don't know if that's just because I'm sitting here with the kind of grumpy face on that the season has been a poor start. But I certainly think that for the expectations of a window, I would say that we've probably hit pretty rock bottom in terms of what we could have got anyways, or what we maybe expected with the links. I'm going to take the... Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, if you were to give it a rating out of 10, Alex, what would you give Rangers window?
4. I think 4, yeah. I feel bad because I'm very much, I sit in the Clement. I think Clement can get something out of our Rangers side. I'm not sure if it's this Rangers side, and that's because we have a lot of problems. But I think he's maybe been let down a little bit by the transfers and by players not leaving. I mean, Scott Wright and Todd Cantwell leave, but if they leave a bit earlier, does that mean we have time to bring somebody else in? I mean, I know Samuel Edozie was pretty close to a move, and apparently we pulled out. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be in the know and say exactly what happened, but that's the kind of rumors floating about. But yeah, there's just a lot of problems behind the scenes with Rangers, and yeah, I hope that's fixed quick so that we can fix what's on the pitch.
Yeah, I don't know. I just worry for Rangers again. It's just been such a poor start to the season, Alex. But you never know. Stranger things have happened and all that. They could turn it around.
Yeah, well, here's hoping. But I've stolen the host chair back. So thank you very much, Josh, for that brief minute there. And also thank you very much for joining me tonight and taking an hour out of your time. Adam, you as well. It's another version of what we can offer here. Winners and losers. We'll see come the end of the season. Guys, if you want to come back to this video and tell us we're all idiots when, Hearts win the league and Aberdeen get relegated. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining us all, and stay tuned because I know that we have something big just around the corner. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and we shall see you all next time.